They called it impregnable. Hidden deep in the Pacific jungle, carved into the cliffs of Peleliu, the Japanese fortress was more than a structure, it was a monster. A network of tunnels and concrete bunkers so fortified, so cruelly efficient. Allied commanders feared it would eat battalions alive. American intelligence called it a death trap. Naval bombardments had little effect. Recon planes returned with the same report. There was no way in. And yet, in one of the most unorthodox moves of the war, the U.S. didn't plan a full assault. They didn't even try to bomb their way through. What they did instead baffled the Japanese and rewrote the rules of jungle warfare. But why would the most feared empire in the Pacific go through the trouble of building an invincible fortress, only to be bypassed like a ghost? It was 1944. The Japanese High Command had poured months of manpower into reinforcing Peleliu. Their strategy was simple: dig into the island like a tick, using a network of caves, tunnels, and hidden pillboxes connected by radio and booby traps. The cliffs bristled with machine guns and mortar. Even the trees were wired to explode. Soldiers nicknamed it the Iron Scar. By the time U.S. scouts saw the blueprints, they realized this wasn't a beach defense. This was an island-sized spider web, and the spider was waiting. Everyone expected General Douglas MacArthur to throw wave after wave of Marines at it. That's how the war had been fought so far. But instead, American commanders did something almost unthinkable. They decided to bypass the entire stronghold. The fortress was real, yes. It was deadly, yes. But strategically, it no longer mattered. The decision stunned both sides. U.S. forces launched their operations elsewhere, seizing more critical supply points and cutting off the fortress from the rest of the Pacific campaign. As weeks passed, the once feared structure sat in eerie silence, fully armed, fully manned, and completely irrelevant. Japanese soldiers waited in their tunnels, listening to radios go quiet. The Americans didn't attack. They didn't come. They just moved on. One Japanese officer would later write in his diary, "We built our tomb with our own hands." The brilliance of the American strategy wasn't in firepower, it was in psychological warfare. By making the Japanese believe their fortress would be the center of resistance, they forced them to concentrate forces in a place that would never see battle. But the real twist was yet to come. Some American recon teams quietly returned, not to fight but to trap. They mined exits, blocked tunnels, and watched. With food supplies dwindling and air support gone, many Japanese defenders surrendered without firing a shot. Others vanished into the rocks. The fortress didn't fall. It faded like a shadow under a rising sun. And as American troops planted flags elsewhere, one truth became clear: sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't a bomb. It's knowing not to fight. Weeks turned into months, and the once glorious fortress of Peleliu began to rot from the inside out. Japanese soldiers, once boasting about their invincible bastion, now sat starving in darkness, their ventilation systems clogged by creeping mold, their ammunition rusting in damp crates. The very tunnels meant to give them an edge became tombs. American psychological operations had gone a step further, broadcasting messages from loudspeakers about the futility of resistance, listing units that had already surrendered, and announcing that reinforcements would never come. Each broadcast chipped away at morale, turning the fortress from a symbol of honor into a prison of shame. It wasn't just military brilliance, it was psychological strangulation. And it worked. By the time American units returned to mop up remnants, the fortress was barely defended. No grand firefight, no cinematic last stand. Just shadows in a cave, some skeletons in uniforms, and faded flags folded into damp rocks. Military analysts later admitted the Japanese had created a masterstroke of engineering, but failed to understand the new rhythm of modern warfare. Their obsession with defense had cost them flexibility. While they guarded a rock, the U.S. carved a path to Tokyo. While they held tunnels, the U.S. held supply lines. This wasn't just a tactical victory, it was a lesson in adapting or vanishing. The brilliance of ignoring the fortress wasn't in what the U.S. did, it was what they didn't do. No unnecessary losses, no grinding landings, no glory-seeking attacks for the sake of headlines. Instead, it was cold, calculated, and exact. The Japanese commanders, trained in traditional doctrine, couldn't comprehend it. To them, an unchallenged fortress was sacred. To the Americans, it was irrelevant. This was the quiet revolution of warfare, where winning didn't mean storming every hill, but knowing which hills mattered. And so the mighty fortress of Peleliu passed into obscurity, not because it was taken by force, but because it was left behind. A monument to old thinking in a war that demanded new minds. As the war rolled on, stories of the untouched fortress spread across both armies. For some, it became a symbol of strategic genius. For others, a haunting reminder. The worst defeat isn't always on the battlefield, it's being ignored by the enemy you prepared so hard to destroy. Now ask yourself what other invincible strongholds were left to crumble because someone knew not to knock. Think about that the next time you hear about a final stand. And if you found this story compelling, subscribe for more untold tactics and moments that reshaped World War II forever.